Hey there, today I'm going to be showing you 5 more easy sheet pan recipes, and the reason why I love making these sheet pan meals so much for my family is because all I have to do is throw everything onto my sheet pan, bake it up, and then there you go. You have a hassle-free dinner to put onto your kitchen table. So I hope you enjoy it, and let's go get started. We're kicking today off with my husband's favorite barbecue chicken and vegetables. To my cutting board, we are going to peel and dice 5 small to medium-sized sweet potatoes. Next, dice a half of a red onion and 1 large head of broccoli. If you don't care for any of these particular veggies, you could always use veggies that you love as a substitute. But over to my sheet pan that I have lined with parchment paper, I add in my sweet potatoes along with a tablespoon of olive oil and a dash of salt and pepper. Give this a little stir to coat the sweet potatoes in the seasonings and the oil. We're going to bake this in a preheated oven to 425 degrees for about 18 minutes. While our sweet potatoes are starting to get soft in the oven, we are going to begin on the barbecue seasoning mixture. So to this little bowl, add in a tablespoon of brown sugar, a teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of pepper and paprika, an 1/8 teaspoon of chili powder, and a half a teaspoon of onion powder and garlic powder. Give this a really good stir. Now we're going to start on our chicken. I'm using 2 large chicken breasts for this recipe. You could, of course, always use more or less chicken depending on your preference. Make sure you slice the chicken breasts in half horizontally, just like this. This will make your chicken a lot more tender in the end, and then it will help cook your chicken quicker in the oven. I poured a little bit of olive oil on the top of my chicken, and then I'm pouring some of that seasoning mixture on both sides of the chicken. I did save some of that seasoning mixture for the broccoli and the onions here in a moment. Now that we have our sweet potatoes out of the oven, we are just going to push them to one side of the sheet pan, and on the center of the sheet pan, I'm going to be adding the chicken breasts that we just seasoned. Just add those chicken breasts right next to each other, and then to the other side of the sheet pan, go ahead and add the broccoli and the onions that we cut up earlier. Over the top of the broccoli and the onions, I drizzled about a tablespoon of olive oil, then I sprinkled the remaining seasoning on the top. I gave the broccoli and the onions a little stir, then this baked for an additional 20 minutes or until my chicken was cooked through. While that's baking away in the oven, we are going to start on the barbecue honey mixture now. So to this little bowl, I added in 1/3 cup of barbecue sauce and about 3 tablespoons of honey. I gave this a good stir, but now that our sheet pan's out of the oven, we are going to pour that barbecue sauce all over the top of the chicken and then spread it out. This is going to give this chicken a lot of added flavor. This baked in my oven for an additional 3 minutes just to kind of get that barbecue sauce nice and caramelized on the top. This sheet pan dinner is 10 out of 10. It is so good, and those veggies are nice and tender. And if you don't know this yet, a lot of the sheet pan meals here on my channel are perfect for meal prepping. So if you're into meal prepping right now for like lunches or dinners, this recipe is great. I know this is a bold statement, but this sheet pan chicken with bacon, potatoes, and Brussels sprouts has to be one of my all-time favorite sheet pan meals. I started out by cutting 1.5 pounds of baby golden potatoes into small bite-sized pieces, and then I trimmed and halved about 1 pound of Brussels sprouts. I'll set these vegetables to the side. We're going to work on the balsamic sauce right now. To this little bowl, I'm adding in 1/3 cup of balsamic vinegar, followed by a tablespoon of olive oil. Next, add in a half a teaspoon of salt and a half a teaspoon of paprika. Now we're going to add in the juice from a half of a lemon, and I know a lot of us don't have fresh lemons on hand often, but it's worth getting one for this recipe. Now add in a tablespoon of minced garlic and a half a teaspoon of pepper. Give this a whisk. Now I'm going to add in about 2 pounds of chicken. I did cut this chicken into larger pieces. I'll give this a stir and let this marinate while we start working on our bacon. I am going to slice about 6 strips of bacon into smaller pieces. I set my bacon to the side and I pulled out my sheet pan. I have my sheet pan right here lined with parchment paper, and onto the sheet pan we are going to be adding the potatoes and the Brussels sprouts that we cut up earlier. And all over the sheet pan you are going to scatter the bacon. You don't really want the bacon touching each other like too much, because you want that bacon to get nice and crispy, and you want the potatoes and Brussels sprouts to get flavorful from the bacon. Now I'm adding our chicken pieces around the sheet pan, and I'm going to drizzle the sauce over the top. This is going to bake in a preheated oven to 375 degrees for about 30 to 35 minutes, or until the chicken gets cooked through and the bacon gets crispy. Like I said before, this has to be one of my all-time favorite sheet pan meals, and you know what? I'm not even the biggest Brussels sprout fan in the world, but cooking them this way makes them amazingly delicious. I could eat every single Brussels sprout on this pan, and I serve this alongside of a side salad. This meal's amazing. Now we're making these mini personal-sized quesadillas. To begin, to the pan on my stove, I'm adding 1 pound of ground beef. If you don't want to use ground beef, you could always use ground turkey or any other ground meat or meat substitute that you'd like. After my ground beef was cooked through, I removed any grease from the pan, and now I'm adding in 1.5 tablespoons of taco seasoning and 1/3 cup of water. I'll give this a stir, and I'm going to let this simmer together for a few minutes. After my simmering time is up, it is now time to assemble our quesadillas. So I have a sheet pan here lined with parchment paper. I sprayed the parchment paper with some oil spray. Now I'm going to lay our tortillas down. I'm just using the street taco-sized flour tortillas. Those are our favorite for this recipe. Over all the tortillas, add some refried beans. I just used a can of refried beans. And then over the refried beans, add some of that ground beef taco mixture. And if you see a third hand in there, it is just my little helper Macy. She was really enjoying the cheese. And then over the ground beef, add some shredded cheese. The last thing you will do is put another tortilla on the top, spray the top of the tortillas with some oil spray, and then bake this in a preheated oven to 450 degrees for about 8 to 12 minutes, or until the tops of the tortillas are nice and crispy. My family loves when I make these quesadillas. They're super flavorful and good, and the coolest part about these quesadillas is you could really make these your own by adding ingredients or subtracting ingredients. You could add beans or corn and then serve these with your favorite toppings. Now we're making this pesto chicken, so grab a large bowl, and to that large bowl add in about 2 large chicken breasts, and do slice those chicken breasts in half horizontally. This will really help them cook quicker, like I said previously. Next, add in about 1.5 pounds of baby golden potatoes and cut those potatoes into small bite-sized pieces. Then add in about 1.5 cups of cherry tomatoes with 2 tablespoons of olive oil and 1/3 cup of basil pesto. And then for the seasonings, I just tossed in a dash of Italian seasoning and salt. Give this a really good stir. After I placed my chicken and vegetables on my sheet pan, I tried to spread them out as even as possible. This baked in a preheated oven to 400 degrees for about 25 minutes. You are going to love this pesto chicken. Those potatoes are crispy on the outside, and on the inside they are silky and smooth, and those tomatoes are just bursting with flavor, and they will burst in your mouth. This meal is really good. The other night I was craving meatball subs, so now we're making these turkey meatball subs. To this bowl I added 1 egg followed by 1/4 cup of Italian style breadcrumbs. Next add in 1/4 cup of chicken broth, and for the seasonings add in a teaspoon of onion powder, garlic powder, and paprika, then 1/2 teaspoon of pepper. Whisk this all together until it looks like this. Now I'm going to add in 1 pound of ground turkey. I use used lean ground turkey. My ground turkey was 93.7. Now with the back of my fork, I am just mixing this all together. I set this to the side. I have my sheet pan right here, and on my sheet pan we are going to add about 3 cups of fresh cauliflower florets. And if you don't care for these veggies I'm using, you could always use different veggies that you like. Then I added 3 cups of broccoli florets, and I'm just spraying them with a little oil spray, or you could use regular oil. I seasoned the veggies with a dash of pepper and salt. I gave them a really good mix. Now we're going to add our meatballs. I made 12 meatballs and I just rolled them into little golf balls. This baked in a preheated oven to 400 degrees for about 20 to 22 minutes, or until the meatballs were cooked through. But once out of the oven, I started on the meatball sub part. So I have my hoagie rolls right here. I placed them on my little sheet pan and I put them under the broiler for about a minute or two. This is going to help prevent the bread from getting soggy. Now I'm adding about 3 meatballs into each hoagie roll, and then over the meatballs, I added a little bit of marinara sauce right onto those meatballs. Then the last thing I did was add a couple of mozzarella cheese slices over the marinara sauce. I put this under the broiler for an additional minute to melt the cheese. We love these meatball subs so much, but the reason why this recipe rocks so much is because you don't have to make meatball subs with these turkey meatballs. You could do regular spaghetti and meatballs. You can make these meatballs up and just eat them with sauce. So that's why this recipe is so awesome. You could do really whatever you like with these cooked meatballs. Thank you so much for being here today, and I would love to have you over here at my channel, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any more videos in the future. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.